Hey guys, hope all is well. My name is John and I go by the artist name Chamberlain. Today I'm just going to walk you through a track of mine coming out on Gravitas Records called Lippy. I'm just going to take you through my workflow and a few tips and secrets that go beyond basic mixing. So I hope you enjoy. This is my studio session for my track Lippy on my next EP, Ancient Technology. I'm just going to play it first and then I'll run through a few things with it.
What it is? Flip it to a billion until you don't know. Ooh, we law, overdue, Global King. No matter what it is, you know we work your teeth. Credential, no need. Self-made theory, the thesis, believe this. I'm already living all the telekinesis. I'm a real mainstream.
Cool, so that's the basis of it. Just so you know what you're looking at, I'm just going to quickly talk about my template or the way I've set this session up, which is from my template. Just quickly, I can do another video about my template if there is actually any interest to it, but just to explain the routing and everything. So I have two main drum buses. One is just for all my driving drums. The second one is mainly for fills and other things. This is because I do a lot of effects on my ones, like filtering and other stuff here that I don't want. If I have drum fills and stuff coming in and I've got like drums that are fading out one way, I don't want to have them all affected by the same thing. So even here you can see that I've got this what's it called, high pass filter being pulled down and this low pass filter opening up here, but I've got sticks going on in a different one. I don't want the filters to affect everything, so it just makes sense in that sense to keep it like that. I then have a vocal group. That group is separate to my other stuff just because I sidechain it differently. My vocals always sit on top of my instruments just a little bit, so I sidechain them less and it's just easy to look at that way. My instruments, which have all these different groups inside them, they are all sidechained by this one section here, which is Shaper Box, where it's just a multi-band sidechain splitter. It's kind of like LFO tool, but like I can put up to 3 bands in it, which is I find that really neat. So I've got this not doing the high end that much of my kick, like it's doing it at 50%, and it's got a faster release than the lower end here. For my claps as well, I've just got something really sharp to make sure that it carves out everything every time a clap comes in, because my claps and kicks do overlap, but for this other 50% that's coming in here, I still want to make sure that when the claps come in that it's just cutting right through. Then all these two groups here, my vocals and my instrument group here, run to this sound bus here, which just has another bunch of like effects like automation and reverb, washout stuff. Anything I want everything to be affected by, I can just chuck on this thing. I have some of these effects here which also I use to like kind of like melt away or smash things up. A bit different from like washout effects, but I like to use delay effects and like flanges or metallic effects a bit. So if I solo this, I can show you what it sounds like. Most of that is coming from the delay. This here, if you have the feedback about 75% and you just automate the time, I've got the wet dry as well automated, but the time is the big thing here. As long as the wet dry is enough so you can hear it, when this decreases in time, like the pitch changes. I think I learned that from a Tristan tutorial, the Psytrance DJ. He's got heaps of cool stuff on YouTube, and yeah, there's heaps of stuff to learn from that genre because they mangle audio in heaps of different ways. When it comes to my drums, also, So my mixing is nothing crazy. It's all the same basic stuff everywhere. Like just subtle bumps here and there. Just EQ, dynamic control, controlling the panorama and the space. It's just getting better at those fundamental rules of how to shape audio. But something that sits outside the mixing realm that's so important to making your stuff sound good is sample selection. And no matter what you do, like choosing the right sounds for your track is going to be a completely like that. You can't, if your sounds aren't right, no matter what mixing you do, it's not gonna fix what you've got. So that's something I could talk about for ages. But yeah, so that's a huge thing. With regards to this kick drum though, not much is happening to it. This here just makes it a bit crispier. But this phase distortion thing is an effect that I use on literally everything. There's a plugin called Disperser which does this kind of sound, which is what I believe is called all-pass filtering, which, if I'm correct with my understanding of this, I could be wrong, but it's not filtering out sounds, but it's phase rotating some frequencies. The reason, and you can make this in Ableton, the reason it sounds the way it does is, well, the reason it works in Ableton is because the EQ3 causes phase rotation at these crossover points here. So when you stack them up a bunch of times, it creates a bunch of phasing with that, and it actually makes a really pleasing sound. So this is just my device. It's just this. If I turn this on, it's just every time I hit 10, it just turns more on. This is it without this on. The transients sound better, the like subtones sound better. It's just, in my opinion, day and night. And even if I was to just show you with a saw wave, I use this all the time. So you can hear it a lot better when you saturate stuff. Also, for every channel I do, I always have, like, if I drag whatever it is, audio channel, MIDI channel, everything I have starts at -12, just because it's so much easier for me to start there. And then as I'm writing stuff, I found, for me at least, everything always just tends to get hotter and hotter. So I am like, oh, I need to bring that out more. Instead of turning every channel down, I'll lift something up. I can, if I start at -12, I can do that and not have everything. Like if you start at unity, you're working relative to unity, and you can only make loudness. Loudness isn't an absolute term, it's a relative term. So you need things to be quiet to be loud. So if you're always hitting 0 and stuff, like, you can always turn it up later, but if you've got no room to make things loud, or you need your kick drum to like really cut through because you're like, oh, my beats are weak, it's just so much harder to, it's not a big deal, but you have to pull everything down and then try and drag things up. So I try to start quieter first and pull things up, and I have by default a utility on every single channel so that I can volume automate stuff, because if you're volume automating with your channel faders, like, you're gonna have a bad time. Like, straight up, you just need those for later on when you're moving around. And I always hold down shift when doing stuff, otherwise you're just all over the shop. Holding down shift, you can make adjustments, like really small ones like that. So that's the way I work. Anyway, I got sidetracked a little bit. If I take this, put this on here, it's just the EQ3. So I'm gonna just have a single saw wave going. By the way, also this template for this device for Serum is just my macros already ready to go. My pitch bend plus a -12 semitones, because that's what I normally have it. Like, I normally pitch bend by those rates. Portamento ready to go. This is something I got off a Warp Academy tutorial, but it's just saved so much time for me. Anyway, so this is what this sounds like, and you can hear it a lot more with a saturator on. This is what it sounds like, saw wave saturated. This is what it sounds like with the all pass filtering. with some actual filtering. Verse. Just has that sticky feel, and just, I don't know, it makes it sound so much better. I abuse that to hell. That's like probably my biggest secret weapon. Cymbals, actually a lot of other drums, a lot of drum fills and stuff. I use Addictive Drums, which is just this awesome plugin for writing drums. You can treat drums like you would in a studio, where you've got overheads and room mics and stuff, and you can choose things like if you've got a snare, like where the snare is going to hit, like if it's going to hit the top or bottom, and a few other things like that. You just, it's the way if you want your drums to sound less electronic, this is the way to go, 100%. This also has a whole bunch of beats already in it. If I play this, this is playing what I've chosen here, but you can change things like the dynamics. You can change what elements you want in. The timing and everything, and when you're done, you can just drag this into your DAW, and that's ready to go. And you can edit the MIDI file there, or if you want, you don't want to work in MIDI, you can just drag this out and it'll render it to audio. If I have an audio channel here, yeah, you can see there. Moving on. The next thing I think that's probably worth mentioning is I use this plugin called Manipulator by Polyverse and the Infected Mushroom guys. This is just set to the pitch and formant as on a macro, but I just love the way this thing sounds. If you want to make weird sounds, like it's mainly made for voices, but you can chuck it on anything. Like I use it on heaps of different things. And I also use the stereo widener in this is amazing. They actually have a free Polyverse release. I think it's just this stereo widener as its own, and it's free, and you can hear how this works here. I just use that from now on. Like once I found the plugin for that, like that's just the best for me. That's just like the best widening sound plugin there is. So that's all I use now. With regards to vocals and stuff, I don't do much insane stuff. This is my main vocals, which I actually pulled from a Gravitas Create pack. I was looking for some female rap vocals, and I discovered this by accident, and once I found them, I'm just like, these are sick, I'm just going to stick with them. I've got Valhalla reverb on, not a lot going on here with my EQ, some saturation to just sparkle it up a bit, and Soothe. Soothe is also, if you don't have it, I know I've said this about a lot of other plugins, but like this is amazing. I use this on everything from like hi-hats and drums to like basses and stuff. It's basically a smart DS. It just finds any resonant tones or sibilant tones and just gets rid of them. You don't need to like pick frequencies or anything like you would with like an EQ or like creating dynamic EQs, and it's not like a DS where it'll just hit certain frequencies when it goes above a threshold. This just finds anything and gets rid of it. Save me so much time, and I can do a lot of things where like if I want to distort something, usually I'll filter it before distorting it, because you're going to bring in those like harmonic overtones like after distorting it, like they're going to come back. Like things can get crunchy way too fast. This I can actually reduce it after the fact, like I don't need to necessarily filter it. I can smooth it out later. Anyway, this I'll show you what this actually does. These are the vocals. So this is removing these sounds here.
Law of a duke or a king, no matter what it is, you know we broke your teeth. Credential, no need.
It's just a little bit smoother, and it's just something that once I got it, I can't live without it. It's probably going to see it on a bunch of different channels from here on, because I use it so much. When it comes to glitches and stuff, I hate making my own glitches, but I do it sometimes. I use a lot of samples. I know that there's plugins like by glitch machines that you can create glitches with. They also sell glitches. I think I use a lot from them, or there's a lot of small collectives that actually just make sample packs of glitches. People make stuff straight out of data, and not all glitches are made the same, which is worth noting. Like sometimes you can have things sound like radio transmission sounds, sometimes you can have things sounding like straight up like modem sounds. Like there's so many different things, but I'm not huge. I love the way they sound. I'm not huge into making them. Mr. Bill's another one who has a bunch of them, which are great. But when it comes to these though, a really quick way, or something I like to do when I do need to make them on the fly, like a lot of what I'm looking for is things you can do in Ableton super fast. I can grab a snare like this. This is what it sounds like. Oh, I think a sidechain's hitting that. Take that, turn this on, and then it's just stretched out heaps, and then you've got, and then those kind of sounds I just use a lot. And I've also got Soothe on here because there's probably a whole bunch of sounds here that are too harsh. Alright, I'm just going to move forward from these sounds. These are drone sounds from like the sample packs. I've got the Cashmere stuff here, or like these freeze ones here, things that I've rendered out somehow. The mixing here, there's nothing much crazy going on. Yeah, can't say looks like a lot that's worth mentioning with this. This next section though, so this is a trick I like to use a lot. It's when you loop things in simpler, really fast, and then you can automate it out. So this is what the automation looks like. There's a band pass with decently high resonance, and then this is the loop length. This just brings out the squelchiness, the filter, and this will just slow down. I'll play it for you, you can hear it. Those kind of sounds, I've got that sprinkled throughout the track in a few different places. Moving forward from this, I get to the bass section, and I've got on this my Convolution Pro with a Max for Live device, which is amazing. Between that and the Valhalla Reverb, those are the two I use the most. Valhalla for things when things sound dry, like I have a guitar sound or something that it just needs to have a bit more life to it, whereas Convolution Pro I use more of a sound design tool. Like I want things to sound specifically in certain spaces. Like I want it to sound like it's in a cave by the beach, or like forest sounds, or like really specific room sounds. Or you can chuck it, like you don't actually have to completely use it as a reverb tool. Like if you want to make your basses or something sound super metallic, you can chuck like a Foley sample of like a trash can getting hit into this, and then just use it on whatever you want to use. You can chuck percussion loops in there, and it sounds sick. You can use it you don't have to use it as a reverb tool. All you need to do is just pretty much drag a impulse response. Like I can, even if I take something like this, actually, where is it? If I'll loop this section here, I'll just get a loop from one of these. What have we got here? Where's my loops? Oh, those aren't going to be what I'm looking for, but I'll go to maybe something like this. And you've got these crazy sounds. If I drag another one in, and that whole thing from the start. That all you're hearing then is the reverb, because I was set to 100, so it's still going because that's obviously a loop. It might be smarter to drag a loop in, make it tail like fade out, and then drag it in. But yeah, Convolution Pro, it's the best. In terms of stuff that I've got going on with my mixing, pretty much not a lot. I think this was a sampler I used, but in terms of making these basses, like, they ain't hard to do. My general rule, if you want to make a really thick pluck sound, is just stack 4 up, which is like a sub, one that sits between the ranges of like 200 and 1000 hertz, and like kind of distort it a bit and make it a bit crunchy. Then have like a high-end one and a percussive element on top, and then you can just make some, I think, like glue it together, saturate it, and like and then you just got like some really thick basses. This bass, I think, but I use the Trash 2, which is, it's awesome. If you don't have it, this thing goes on sale all the time for like $15 on Plug-in Boutique or something. I use the Convolve Pig setting, and I've just automated this so that it comes in. I've just got a bunch of different bass here actually that I've either created myself or pulled from samples, and this Pig sounds like this. The bass slap I use pretty much on everything. I turned this off by accident, but this is straight out of Ableton. That is just OTT guitar rig, which I think, because I'd saved this as I wasn't expecting that. I saved this as an instrument rack for some reason. When I changed machines, it didn't save the settings in it, so that guitar rig is doing nothing. So it's just OTT and this carved out EQ. This Serum stab is one that I made from just a saw wave and FMing it. There's not a crazy amount of cool stuff in this one, but what I did do, which I think is worth noting, is use that all pass filtering trick again. This is what it sounds like without it, and this is what it sounds like with it. That is, in my opinion, like, I like brings so much stuff to life. This hyper bass here is something that I learned from an AU5 tutorial. If you haven't seen it, just go searching YouTube AU5 hyper bass, and you basically use Serum to resynthesize square waves, and then you just make these real thick sounds with it, and just can turn it into wobbles. It sounds like this. This neuro bass was something, I think it was just like square waves and another reseat, yeah, there we go, waveform. This is, I dumped on an amp, a few other things here, but what I think was the most important stuff was the end here, where I filtered out a lot of it, and then this middle this high pass isn't doing anything, but the middle one here, I've got macroed to an XY pad that moves around the place a bit here. Oh. And just OTT'd it to bring it back. I think a lot of, like, I know everyone abuses OTT, but what I like to do is, you filter out a bunch of things, and then you realize you filtered out a bit too much. You can kind of bring it all back to life with the OTT. Obviously, go easy on it. I know none of us do, but it is what it is. And I think with regards to that, these neurobasses, can't remember how I made them, because I know, because it says freeze there, that I've done something, but I've used obviously convolution again to add sounds to it, soothe again. These are the kind of things I use all the time. From memory, actually, I've been using I think something like this on, and if you use the vocoder tool and you move around the formant and the depth heaps, you can get some real squelchy sounds coming out of it when you set the modulate. I don't know if this is going to work right now, but I'll just try. Oh, I filtered out a bit too much of this for it to work. Ugh. With some more like pitch bending and stuff, you get the idea. You'll be able to do a bunch of things with it. And I think probably the last thing worth mentioning, which kind of dives into my template a bit more, but I place so much importance on having a good template and so much importance on making sure that when you're using technology, the technology works for you. You're not working for the technology, because as a human being, like, the creative side is what you need to push the most. The technical stuff can come second. I have a huge philosophy about keeping like the technical side and the creative side separate, because if you're burning your brain power on the technical side that you can just do as clockwork, then you're losing the creative side. So having a good template, having a good workflow and everything else, and just making sure you can access the creative side as soon as you need to do it, reach for the tools you want and everything else. That's something I place huge importance with, which is this reverse reverb thing. It's not something I use all the time, but I know everyone knows what reverse reverb is, but I think there's this way of doing it I find really easy to do. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly show how this works. All I need to do is, if I wanted to take a bit, so I've got this little bit of audio here, or I'll just take like one of these MIDI notes or something, I'll drop it into this section here. All right, let's have a look. That's playing from then on, so I'm just going to have it play, so it's only going to play this. So nothing else should be playing. So the way this works is, this is a send, and if I turn this up, this is going to be played through this, which is just 100% reverb with a compressor on it. It's going to blast the hell out of it, make a huge tail, might be a bit loud. This gets routed straight into this channel here, and all I have to do, as long as that one's ready to go here, is just hit this button. I know everyone has their own way of doing this, but I find that really easy to do. And then I can just create a new channel, get to, where is this? Drop this in, get that, fade that out. Oh, it was over here, wasn't it? Reverse it. Oh, maybe I need to not do that. Reverse it this way. If I was to get rid of all this stuff here, turn this back on, maybe add some reverb and some delay. I might pull this down a bit because I know this is loud, because the compressor on the send channel has pulled it up a bit, so I'll pull it, I'm guessing about there. And other things you can do to make it sound even better, like turn this off, change the phase to this, and just move this around so it sounds stuff like, oh, that didn't do what I needed it to do. Oh, it's in the wrong channel. That brings me to the end of this video. Cheers for watching. I hope you learned something new today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I love talking about this stuff. In the meantime, check out my EP on Gravitas coming out June 19th. Super excited. And yeah, till next time, peace.